Drive, I'm Jock Wilson. Earlier this week, Calgary immigration lawyer Jatin Shory spoke before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. And now, Jatin Shory joins us on the Drive. Jatin, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again, Jock, for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Okay, so what was your message? What were your concerns when you stood in front of that standing committee earlier this week?
Well, as you or your listeners, they may or may not know, but the Standing Committee on Immigration and Citizenship is doing a test right now to see how COVID-19 has impacted immigration, generally speaking. So my main purpose that day was to provide a witness statement, and I spoke primarily on family separation. And, we're hearing a lot about the impact of various family applications that are being delayed, including spousal sponsorships or parent-grandparent sponsorships, these kinds of things. Eventually, my suggestion was I think we can really go back to the drawing board here. It's a time to kind of look at how these processes are unfolding. Can we make things a little more efficient? Is technology, as is becoming for a lot of things, work from home policies, is that the future here, and should we be exploring that?
So what sort of delays are we seeing with the immigration process right now because of COVID?
Sure. So, from the family reunification, family class application process, typically how the system works is you file an overseas application for your spouse. It takes about a year for it to process, and if everything's good, your spouse joins you in Canada. But what we're finding now is that because of COVID, of course, look, like everything else in every industry, there are going to be delays. But what we're finding is that perhaps, some of the policies and announcements that have come out recently are responding to those who may have a clearer sense of where their application is heading. But then there are a lot of people who are going to get left behind in the way things are unfolding with COVID-19, specifically for those families that, for example, had interview dates set up at visa offices abroad. A lot of them have zero idea of when those are going to be rescheduled, and that's a big issue because there is already a backlog that's being created. And so what may take a family or a newly created family to reunite in about a 12-month period, I can't even sit here and give you a timeline, and that's scary for me. We're talking a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years possibly of delays.
Obviously a big concern for your clients, because, if they can't get the reunification, that's stressful, isn't it?
Absolutely, and unfortunately there's no other solution in the immigration space right now that maybe even gives a temporary response to what's going on.
How many people are brought into Canada through this process usually?
Well, I don't actually have that number exactly, but what I can say is that the government's promising to process 6,000 applications. Processing doesn't mean they're getting joined, and there will be refusals. There will be people left behind, right?
Yeah, and so that's the big issue right now because you're not getting to all of these applications, obviously.
No, not at all. Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so how can it be fixed in your opinion?
Well, like I said at the beginning, I think there are solutions for incorporating a little bit more technology. So interviews, for those who may not know, interviews are typically conducted in person, and it involves usually the spouse, who's the applicant overseas, to go to a visa office and do their interview there. But what I proposed and I think is a good idea is the implementation of technology. I think everyone is now used to the Zoom work from home lifestyle, and so it's really easy to incorporate that at a visa office, I'd say. We do it very smoothly here. When these applications get refused, we go to what's called the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, where we appeal these decisions, and they've very smoothly incorporated video conferencing to allow the spouse who's overseas and challenging the decision to just Zoom right in. And I don't see why that can't be done at the interview level overseas. The second thing that we really need to do, and this is just about accountability, is start recording these interviews. What we find is that when we get refusals, we take them to appeal. Ultimately, there's a lot of discrepancy that could possibly be better resolved if we have a copy of the interview, and usually the sponsor, who's the person who's putting in the application to bring their spouse to Canada, if at the way things are right now, a lot of them get left behind, and so if they're not there physically in the building, they're not going to get interviewed, and so you're up until for a year, it's been two people putting together this application, and then all of a sudden at the interview, it's just the perspective of one person, and I don't know if that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel your voice was heard by the standing committee?
I think time will tell. The standing committee has held a number of meetings, and I know that. And I'm not the only immigration lawyer speaking there. And I know that a lot of my colleagues, senior counsel, people who have been there for 20, 30 years as well. I mean, a lot of these ideas are it's an exciting time to be talking about these things, I think, in immigration. So I think time will tell. We'll see which recommendations the government likes to put forward eventually. I think it was a great opportunity, and I appreciate that the exercise was happening and that there is a study. I think that's a big deal. So for me, again, we'll see. Time will tell.
And what are you hearing from your clients? So obviously, a lot of this is confidential. So I'm just wondering, what sort of concerns you're hearing from your clients.
Frustration, confusion, and, as lawyers, we like to feel like we have 95 to 100% of the answers, and a lot of times at the beginning, when COVID hit, I spent about the first couple months just answering phone calls from clients basically saying, how do I reunite with my spouse? How do I bring my, husband or wife here? Why can my family not board the plane when the government says they need XYZ and they have XYZ, but yet they're being rejected at the airport? So it was a lot of just family reunification stuff. But ultimately, yes, there's a frustration. I have a client, for example, who, and this is now a refugee matter, which is another family reunification tool for a lot of families here that like to sponsor their family members abroad who are in refugee camps and qualify for sponsorship. And this program already takes 5 years, 6 years. And I have a family, for example, that's about 12 years out now, and now there's just zero communication coming from these visa offices in terms of any indication of where things are progressing. And so it's frustration, right? And ultimately, I get that we need to focus when we talk about economy, when we talk about a lot of temporary foreign workers or just people with temporary status in Canada and focus at home. That's definitely, I think, the easy way to resolve some of the immigration problems I think we're going to see in the future. But there's a huge pocket of people as well overseas that need to be, I think, properly looked at and responded to. And there's a level of transparency that I think should be pursued, especially if knowing that these delays are going to happen. Keep us informed. Let us know what's going on.
Well, the interesting thing, Jatin, is the fact is that this country was built around immigration, and immigration is so important, for this country and for this province moving forward.
I absolutely agree. I'm a first-generation Canadian. My parents picked the best country in the world. We're global leaders in immigration, and we should continue to be an example for everyone else.
Is there a timeline for next steps?
Not that I've really heard anything so far. It's kind of a week by week, month by month policy update, and we're just seeing how things unfold. I think when a vaccine comes out, hopefully sooner than later, I think things will start to clear up a little bit around that time as well. Hopefully.
Well, keep up the good fight. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks so much.
No worries, and I appreciate you taking interest in this. It's an important issue. Thanks again.
Calgary immigration lawyer Jatin Shory, a special guest here on The Drive. And, you know what? We'll see how